So, yesterday was just an amazing day. We started at the North Cape at 4 o'clock in the morning with awful weather, but we were so happy that we were at the start of our big trip. And later during the day, we met some really cool people in Alta. We had an amazing ride. We saw a lot of beautiful reindeer. And we found the northernmost part of the Tet. We wanted to do that, but we made it to a river crossing that was just, we could not do it. We could not do it. It looked so challenging. There was like really muddy and wet, and the hill went like this, and then there was the river. And we just did not want to risk doing that at all. As we arrived in Alta, we stopped at a coffee shop for some coffee, and at that time we were in civilization again, and I remember feeling so smelly and just wish I had the opportunity to have a shower. And I remember something my grandma used to say, that you should always wash every day and change your panties every day, because what if something happens and you have to go to the hospital? So we set out to find the second section of the Tet that goes from Alta to Karasjok. And let me tell you, it was so pretty. The ride was just unbelievably amazing. The scenery was stunning. We had sun, blue sky. We made it to an amazing place with a nice view where the gravel road was quite challenging, but we handled it really well. I got to test our new suspensions, and everything just felt awesome. And around 6 o'clock, we decided that it was time to look for camp. And we were tired from having started the day early, and we wanted to be someplace beautiful for the night, so we could go to bed early and get some sleep before our next ride tomorrow. We were riding on a gravel road with quite thick rocks, and a lot of them were pointy, so we thought, oh, I hope we don't puncture. But it was amazing. So about 15 minutes before the time we decided to camp, we were riding, and all of a sudden the ground just disappeared below me. It just disappeared. I was riding first and Kenneth came later. The gravel road was kind of bumpy. There were 2 small bumps. I don't remember this, but I saw it in a picture later. But there were these 2 bumps, and then after that, just a hole into the river with 3 or 4 meters of river. On each side of the river, there were these rocks. I came first, and all of a sudden, the ground just disappeared underneath me. And I could feel I'm not sure if I could feel my rear tire fall down first, or if that was just something I thought after. But my bike fell down into a river, and I think I fell on my back. And then seconds later, I heard something in our intercom. It was Kenneth saying, "What the?" And it went silent. The hole in the ground came so fast that I didn't break. I didn't warn Kenneth. I just went in there, and then I was in there. And then Kenneth came flying after me. There was a loud bang from his bike hitting the ground. And I just stood up, and my first thought was, I gotta hit the dead man's button. So I hit the one on mine, and then I went over to Kenneth's bike that was laying completely flat on its side. And I pushed his button, and then I thought, oh no, I gotta kill the ignition. And so I went to turn the ignition off on mine, and then went back to his. Don't let the engines flood, because we're gonna be riding out of here, and we don't want to deal with that. While this was happening, Kenneth was standing between the bikes, hunched over, and he was every time he breathed, he made this noise. Like, he was clearly struggling, and he was clearly in pain. He had been in pain for a long time because his ribs were injured just a couple of weeks earlier. And just for a second, I hoped that that was the reason that he was in pain now. But then I got to thinking about the amount of energy that was involved in this crash. From my background as a nurse, I knew that if you're going that fast and you're in a crash, then you're in trouble. You need a trauma team to examine you. I knew I needed to call the ambulance. I had no idea where we were, but I have this app on my phone that sends the coordinates of the caller. And you can call emergency services directly from there. Because everyone knows when you're in a trauma and you need an ambulance, you don't know where you are unless you're at home. And the minute I touched the 113 button in that app, my phone died. Okay, try and breathe, babe. And the phone died. So I had to get Kenneth's phone and use that to call. And by that time, I had no idea where we were. So I said, we're somewhere in Finnmark. That's the largest county in Norway. It's vast. Luckily, we had the GPS. So Kenneth helped me find the location of where we were, so I could give them the exact coordinates. Kenneth wasn't doing very well. He was in a lot of pain. He was struggling to breathe, and he couldn't draw his breath properly, so his breathing was very shallow. He said that it felt like something had broken inside of him, and he lifted up his shirt and showed me his belly, and there was a bruise. And he pointed to a rock surrounding the river and said, I think I landed with my stomach against that rock. And then I knew we were in trouble. When I explained to the emergency services what had happened, they knew that they had to dispatch a helicopter to come and help us, because Kenneth was badly injured and because we were in the middle of nowhere. So as we were waiting for the helicopter, his pain kept increasing, and he became pale and his lips became a bit blue and he was shaking. I pulled out our sleeping bag because I knew it was bright blue and I wanted to use that to attract the attention of the helicopter so they could see us. And that doubled as a blanket for Kenneth to keep him warm, but he was shaking a lot. He was struggling to speak and his pain was just increasing. While we were waiting for the helicopter, we saw 2 ATVs coming from the other side of the river. My first instinct was to stop them to make sure they didn't fall in the same thing, but they knew about this hole and went in another direction, or they took a different route. Turns out these were policemen out riding ATVs to inspect the reindeer out there. That was just random that they came upon us there. So they took care of the bikes and helped the emergency services pinpoint exactly where we were. We made it to the hospital and we were taken into separate rooms for a trauma team. So we were met by the anesthesiologist, orthopedic doctor, surgeon, bioengineer, anesthesia nurse, operating nurse, and examined from head to toe. Kenneth was sent to we weren't in the same room, so I didn't really know what was going on with him. But for me, they examined me from top to toe and decided I should have an ultrasound of my belly and a CT scan of my head and a CT scan of my entire columna to see that there was no fractures there. I was in a lot of pain in my lower back and my front abdomen and also my neck. And while I was in the trauma room, I got a sudden headache and was very sensitive to light. So they decided I should also have a CT scan of my head. After those were taken, I was sent to the intensive care unit, and shortly after I had arrived, Kenneth arrived. We were in a room with several patients, so we were in next door places with a curtain between us. And on the other side of me was another patient, and I could hear them talking to Kenneth, and I could hear by what I was picking up from the nurses and doctors talking to each other, I knew that he was in poor condition. I was trying to talk to him from the other side of the curtain, try and help him some way. I also went over to him when nobody was watching and I got yelled at by a nurse. So Kenneth, his CT scans showed that he had an internal bleeding in his stomach and that he needed surgery. They prepared him for that and they sent him down immediately. That's when it's bad. They had spoken to the hospital in Tromsø beforehand because Hammerfest is a small local hospital. They don't have all the expertise, but Tromsø is the regional hospital, so they have more specialty fields. So the more serious cases are sent there. They decided to do an explorative laparotomy, which means that they cut his entire stomach open to see what they found. And what they found was a lot worse than what they had anticipated. They found that he had a lot of bleeding and some other damages. So they did a procedure on him and decided that they would have to send him to Tromsø in the morning. So at 3 o'clock, he came back to the intensive care unit where I was. But he was in such a bad condition that they had to keep him sedated. So they brought him into his own room. We were not allowed to be in separate in the same room anymore. And he was kept on a ventilator overnight. It was so strange because I work in an intensive care unit and I know what the sounds mean. The sounds that the ventilator makes. All through everything, I had a very clear idea of what was going on in my head. And when it's a patient, I can sort of disconnect myself a little bit from it because I need to, and I have to. But now it was my own person lying there, and it was rough. I have to tell you, it was rough. The doctor said that I had suffered a concussion, so they had to check my pupils and my blood pressure every hour and speak to me and wake me up and see that I knew where I was and who I was. And so every hour that night, a nurse would come and shine a light into my eyes to check that my pupils dilated with the light and check that I knew who I was, which is part of my job. I'm the one who does that. And next morning they said that Kenneth had to be transported to another hospital, and I got to see him for a little bit, and that was rough. So I just heard from Kenneth's mom that he is out of surgery now, and things are looking okay so far, but I'm not sure what's going to happen. There is another operation that is planned for him tomorrow, and I think that it will be very, very hard for him to bear. I don't know if this is something you want to share, Kenneth, so you can just edit this out. But what your mom said is that your bowel was so badly ruined by the crash that they put a piece of your bowel outside of your belly, and then basically shit comes out in a bag in front of your belly. That is something that will take a lot of getting used to for anyone, and for Kenneth, who has experienced quite a lot of depression and feelings of meaninglessness and hopelessness to begin with. A challenge like that, I fear that it will make him just give up completely. He needs a lot of rest now, so they did not tell him, as far as I know. So I think tomorrow they're gonna take him to surgery, and after that they're gonna wake him up, and then they're gonna tell him. And I really dread the moment that they tell him that. For his own sanity, for the pain that I imagine he will endure when he is given that piece of information. I truly dread that moment. That is what I know today, and I'm feeling quite exhausted, so I'm going to try and accept the sleeping pill that I was offered and try and get some sleep, some rest before tomorrow. Tomorrow I fly out to Tromsø to meet him, and we'll take it from there. He's in intensive care, and he's been in a coma since Monday evening, and it is now Tuesday afternoon. So I'm very intrigued to see if he's awake now or in a lot of pain, or just how he's doing basically. Let's go.